I have with with the movement overall is that, if the legislature isn't in session and there isn't an election, patriotism becomes part-time, and it's very, very dangerous because the enemy works overtime all the time.
I think, though, that occasionally, I'm going to be honest, I don't think I'd ever vote for a Donald Trump for president of the United States. But I just was reading during the commercial break a quick headline that says that Trump threatens the establishment because he threatens NAFTA and he threatens the free trade agreements that the president now has the power to move forward with. He threatens a lot of the cover-up, if you will, the people who've just been putting the what do you call it? They've been trying to just put a little veneer over all of the problems this country has with the porous borders and the like. We do need a few champions who are willing, because this guy is losing business by doing this. We need a few champions who are willing to make some sacrifices, I guess, whether it be him or not, but someone has to step up, right?
Someone has to step up. I heard him the other day on MSNBC, and it was funny, the young little reporter, he controlled her so well. And I love what he said. There wasn't anything that I said that he didn't, that I didn't agree with, other than, when he talks about going to wars, he goes in, talks about getting it done and getting out. The only problem that I think that he didn't say was, these humanitarian missions and these actions that they don't call them wars anymore, and they lack the congressional declaration of war that allows us the ability to be able to go overseas. And so, I don't know where he is. I love the fact that he's upsetting the apple cart. It gets me very, very excited, but I don't believe that voting for president does a thing. And I personally, when people ask me who I'd vote for president, I would actually tell them something that I actually heard Chris Ann Hall say. She made some really great sense when she said, why don't we all forget about the presidency this year? Why don't we all take every ounce of energy that we have and focus on our local governments? Because what happens if we put all of our energies in the presidential election, we take our eyes off of our local election, and our local legislators are losing their backbone against the feds, and so we have no protection against the feds. If we can arm our states and let them and help them understand certain things and stand firm against these abuses, it doesn't matter what kind of federal government we have. Unless they're launching missiles from D.C. and targeting the states can maintain and regain and maintain their sovereignty against any oppressive tyrant.
Our time is 8:50, 10 minutes away from 9 o'clock. Our guest, Tom Munds, and he's with the John Birch Society, representing it here in the state of Idaho. 66 at our studio. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And I think you made a point here, and I'll agree with that. A fellow like Trump, by changing the conversation, is going to benefit, perhaps, the process. But a president himself is not really going to be, even in the age of the imperial presidency, that big of a mover and shaker. But when you reference Chris Ann Hall, I'm not a big believer in term limits, because I think the term limits, we have an opportunity come November every couple of years to term limit people. When you have good legislators and then they walk away after 6 years, you don't necessarily get someone in that position who's as good. And I guess that how shall we put this? Some very good people have done their part and then walked away and perhaps left us wanting more.
Well, please don't. I hope you're not mistaken by the fact that I just because I mentioned her that I actually believe in her position, because I do believe that she is pro-term limits. I also believe she's pro-Article 5, so that puts me actually against her on two specific issues. But she's a brilliant woman. She's done she's done a lot of research, but I'm still not going to go along with her on those issues. I can't. Term limits, like you said, our founders had actually debated term limits, and those that have read, through the documentation and some of the debates regarding that understand clearly that the application for term limits is not one of those things that we would deem very patriotic or constitutional by those that claim to be so.
When you mentioned, though, the concentrating more on the local, perhaps, and state level, I was thinking, too, we've got to concentrate really maybe on that school board level, because there are so many decisions. There's a new bill coming. They've renamed No Child Left Behind, I guess, and restuffed it through the Senate. And working on putting that into place and trying to hoodwink people. And Pat Roberts and others are saying, oh, this is a much better bill, when a lot of us look at it and just kind of raise our eyebrows. But if you have school boards that are willing to follow set community standards, then that means the children in the schools aren't going to be taught all of this anti-American gobbledygook.
Well, I had to say something. If you people that are listening, I hope you get this, and you probably understand that, Twin's a pretty good area for this. They're coming for your kids. The public, they are coming for your kids. Just like we have a neutered state legislature for the most part that kowtows to the feds, we have a school system that kowtows to the money from the federal government. There is no protection. This is the issue that we're dealing with law enforcement, which is why I'm working so hard on trying to launch this initiative, is because the target is being painted on the foreheads of the citizens and the law enforcement, because when it's all reduced and it comes down to brass tacks, the media-driven agenda, I think, is to be able to wage a war between law enforcement and its citizens, and doing any way to do it, whether it's through school boards. I mean, I'm looking at stories now where schools are threatening to call DHS if parents show up late. They have mandatory vaccinations in California. They're teaching you that you're not allowed to, with that purple penguin story, you're not allowed to say mommy and daddy or boy or girl. I mean, and then the health aides are questioning 15-year-olds, on, do you ever think about wearing pants? Or dresses, or, they're coming for your kids. They're melting the minds of our children. And until we can realize that and put a stop to it, we're losing it. Middleton was just in IdahoReporter.com, where I live, for completely abusing the taxpayers again. And if we vote no, they have another bond, and they have another one. And you know what? Lawfully, or I should say legally, they're allowed to spend the tax dollars on having 4 elections if we happen to vote no 3 times in a row. I mean, the lunacy just has no limits.
It's like one of my old coworkers told me some years ago. All they do is if you reject them once, they have this big book of excuses, and they flip the page and go to page 2, and they just keep flipping and flipping and flipping.
But it happens because we cave. We're like, well, okay, well, and then they tell us, oh, well, you guys just weren't adequately, you didn't have the adequate information in front of you before you voted, like we're stupid. And then the average citizen in the average small town goes, oh, yeah, well, I guess you might be right. And so fire bonds pass, school bonds pass, recreation districts are created. We've got refugees. I don't know. Somehow colleges have been given this authority without circumventing the legislature, actually, where they actually have the ability to be able to determine how much tax dollars, and the ramifications to communities by taking people in here that we have to fund. And people look at me and they think that I'm nuts, and they think that there's nothing wrong in this country.
I'll tell you what, I think that a lot of people out there are going to get a rude awakening. And I know it's not fun to be the guy at the end saying, I told you so, when that happens. But when you talk about school boards, just quickly, we've only got about a minute and a half left. It always surprised me that we always have these people who are running, and many of them are former superintendents or school teachers, and they say, we have education expertise, vote for us, when we really should have people in the community. When I was a boy growing up, you had maybe a dairy farmer, you had a police officer, you had a real insurance salesman, a real cross-section of the community, and that board wasn't dominated by people who constantly wanted to spend more of my money on education.
Well, and what the common misunderstanding is, and this goes through all kinds of boards and city councils, is that these people that are elected by the people to represent the people and safeguard the personal property rights of the people actually believe that this is a game of follow the leader, where they follow the mayor or they follow the head of the school board. And so we're in trouble. We just need to wake people up, and God bless you for doing what you're doing. God bless you for having me on, and just keep doing what you're doing, and we're in this together.
Well, before we wrap up, we've got to let people know how they can learn a little bit more about JBS.
Well, you can go to jbs.org, or you can call me. My number is 208-861-7666. 6405. You can go to the contact page at JBS, type in your zip code, and the coordinator in that particular area will actually pop up. So you can contact them. I'll meet with you in person. I travel the state 365 days a year. Actually, it feels like a year and a week. But yeah, JBS.org for all the information that we can get. If I can be of any service to anyone, please don't have them hesitate to call me. Give my number out to them, please.
All right. Well, Tom, I want to thank you again, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Great. Thanks, Bill.
Take care now. Tom Munds joining us from the John Birch Society here in the state of Idaho, spending a few minutes with us, sharing some concerns with us. The JBS, by the way, there's some great videos on YouTube. First of all, they have a lot of tutorial videos that they still issue on a daily basis. But if you ever go back and watch some of the founding videos and the predictions that these people were making in the 1950s and 1960s and what has transpired in this country, sometimes that voice in the wilderness, you've got to pay attention to it. 8:58, Bill Colley with you. Coming up in just a few minutes, MTV, helping with the Maoist cultural revolution in the United States. I'll share some details on that following the news at 9 o'clock.